Avaiya has changed my life.
Avaiya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaiya is my home.
Avaiya is personal freedom.
Avaiya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaiya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaiya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaiya is what the world needs.
Hello, Avaiya family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaiya University. Avaiya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you, as always, for being here and joining us. Our fellow teacher, Dr. Kate Truitt, is back with us today to talk about healing trauma with the havening techniques, integrating neuroscience into the healing journey. Dr. Truitt is a neuroscientist and clinical psychologist with an MBA in healthcare administration and has dedicated her life to advancing the treatment of trauma and stress-related disorders. She leads her flagship organization, Dr. Kate Truitt Associates, headquartered in beautiful Old Town, Pasadena. She is also the CEO of the Trauma Counseling Center with offices throughout the Los Angeles area. Dr. Truitt truly believes that when we choose to let every moment of adversity strengthen and empower us, we are choosing to be our strongest and most empowered selves. Welcome back to Avaiya, Dr. Truitt.
Thank you for having me back, Andy. It's a joy and a pleasure.
Yeah, well, glad to see you again, and I'm so excited that we get to talk about a very important topic that I know is near and dear to your heart, and you've been studying for a very long time. So here we go. Let's start first off with the havening techniques. So if people are unfamiliar with that, what are those?
So the havening techniques are a neurobiologically based modality. They're newer on the scene. And very similar to EMDR, they actually grew out of the base foundational application of EMDR, but streamlined the processes a little bit. And one of the things that's different about them is they rely on receptors in our skin to create change, which means touch. And we know when we're stressed, we often do things that, kind of calm us down. And what we've found out is these touches actually change the way our brain is functioning. And so we've wrapped different cognitive protocols around these touch experiences to create actionable change. And it's really cool because it's not only a clinical tool, it's also a self-healing tool. And I really hope we have the opportunity to talk about that self-healing application, especially when it comes to childhood trauma, because that's such an exciting opportunity to create really powerful change.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for giving us a little 101 on havening techniques to get us started. And how would you see, before we get into self-healing as it relates to childhood trauma, how do you see havening being different from some more traditional psychotherapy approaches to trauma?
Yeah, so havening really works at that subcortical primal brain level. We're working with the parts of their brain where trauma encodes and the subsequent impact of the traumatic encodings on how the brain is showing up and functioning in the day-to-day life. And so one of the things that's so awesome about havening is it's not a therapeutic tool or a modality. It's actually a set of tools that can be integrated into the traditional psychotherapeutic practice or coaching practice or anybody's healing work. It just says, let's get the brain balanced so all that great narrative, cognitive, internal family systems work can unfold without being hampered by the traumatic encodings from the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, since it can be clinically applied as well as a self-healing approach, what does that look like? What does it look like if people are coming to you or someone else, a practitioner, to experience the havening techniques versus doing it themselves as far as touch goes? How does that work?
So we use a lot of what's called the self-havening touch, which is a applied touch. So you can see I just kind of cross my arms across my chest like I'm giving myself a nice hug and then move the hands down the arms. This is actually one of the key mechanisms of action. This moving hug, I like to call it, can be used in the clinical space or in the self-healing space. We've stepped away from what's known as facilitated havening because, the pandemic and all that good stuff. But in the clinical room, sometimes the practitioner does apply the havening touch through what's called facilitated havening, which for childhood trauma can be extremely healing because it's providing a soothing touch that should have been and frequently isn't in a chaotic or volatile childhood home environment for somebody who has developmental trauma. So we can actually recreate what should have been neurobiologically for a wounded nervous system to support and facilitate the healing process. For self-healing, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're giving ourselves a warm, fuzzy hug and saying, hey. And then there's 3 other touches, which are right across the brow, under the cheeks, or as though you're washing your hands under warm water. And all of these touches create a very specific shift in the brain, whether it be in the self-healing space or in the clinical space, that allows us to change the way the brain is accessing and using information.
So, okay. So if someone experiences, right, post-pandemic, right, an actual facilitator helping them, you do this kind of healing versus just doing it themselves. Is there a difference in, like you mentioned, why it's important, for the, developmental trauma? Is there like a difference in what happens to our bodies when someone else is touching us versus we're touching ourselves? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So in the clinical space, we're actually working with targeted and coded memories. So there's an exposure component. We're bringing to mind a traumatic experience from the past and helping the system change and heal through its relationship with it, actually depotentiating the neurons that have encoded it. In the self-healing space, we're not intentionally bringing up traumatic memories because it can be very destabilizing to the system, and especially if somebody has panic or dissociation, those protective mechanisms can kind of stampede into the present moment and get in the way of them being able to do their own self-healing. So the biggest difference is in the clinical room, we're actually bringing in the traumatic experiences and proactively using specific protocols to heal them. In the self-healing space, we're doing much more autonomic nervous system regulation, mindfulness, getting in touch with the brain-body connection, and proactively healing triggers, what we call opportunities, as they come up in our day-to-day life, but not digging into the really tough stuff with intention, because we don't want to destabilize the system if we don't have a protected, safe space to put it back together again.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the difference between those. And so if someone wanted to start, right, practicing this on their own in a safe space, how would they get started doing that? How do they, know that they are safe in doing it within themselves? Like, any thoughts there?
The primary thing that we want to be mindful of is to learn a key tool called CPR for the amygdala, which helps our brain stop ruminating and chewing on painful or threat sensory experiences linked to the past, and basically puts a warm, fuzzy blanket around our threat brain saying, hey, we're okay in the present moment. And that undergirds all of the work that we do, because when we get triggered, when we get reactive, when we have those wackadoodle human moments that we look back on later and go, oh, I did the thing, why did I do the thing? That's because our little threat brain is saying, there's a threat here, and taking over to keep us safe. So the more proactively we calm her down and let her know we're cool, the better our healing and stronger our healing journey is, because it's actually changing the neurobiology of our brain related to those old threat stressors. Right. So that would be where I would start. Or our TikTok channel has a lot of similar type of content, but in tinier bite-sized pieces, even if somebody wants to go tiny bite-sized.
Right. Yeah. I love the CPR for the amygdala. I love that.
Creating personal resilience for the amygdala.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Okay. So like, do people start these exercises when they're triggered, or is it something you're doing when you're feeling okay, nothing's really coming up for you? Like, when does someone apply it?
So when somebody's feeling reactive or triggered, that's a perfect time to do CPR for the amygdala. And just a quick segue, the amygdala, for anybody who doesn't know, is our survival brain. And it is one of the fastest parts of our brain to receive information, and it's empowered to take over if there's a threat that's being perceived. We lovingly call her Amy, and she's like our fierce maternal protector. And so CPR for the amygdala is like, there, Amy, we're okay. And so anytime there's a trigger, we call that an opportunity for proactive healing, because triggers are a sign that something from our past is showing up in our present moment and causing disruption. Because unless there's a tiger in our environment, we shouldn't be going into fight, flight, freeze, or we don't want to fawn a tiger. That's not going to work very well. But we want to be able to stay grounded and calm unless there's a really real threat. And so CPR for the amygdala says, hey, take a breath. There's not a threat there, while actually healing the trigger from the past. And if somebody's calm and grounded, we still certainly recommend bringing in the havening touch. And we have other resiliency focused protocols where we can actually build the brain we want to live with. One of the things that happens with childhood trauma is the amygdala, the hippocampus, which is our memory center, our narrator of our life, have systematically changed the way the rest of our brain functions. And so what should be being built throughout our childhood in a really solid, strong, safe environment doesn't get to be built. And the opportunities of neuroplasticity, which havening uses, our brain's ability to heal and change and grow, is able to be accessed with the havening touch and other protocols to say, wait a minute, I want to build this neural freeway so that I can feel calm and confident and strong. And so there's additional protocols specifically for those pieces when we wake up and we're feeling great and just want to give ourselves a boost.
Right. Yeah. And I think that it's so important that not only when we're right in that trigger space, but yes, also when, why not? Yeah. Give yourself a boost when you're already feeling good and, nothing's going on. And I loved your opportunity for proactive healing. That's awesome. What a great way to look at trigger, right? Because so many of us can see the word trigger and we're like, it triggers us.
It's triggering, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So let's talk a little bit more about neuroscience, right? Brain science. Why do you think it's so important to integrate this brain science into trauma healing?
Because of what I just said. When we experience traumatic encodings in our childhood, our adolescence, our teen years, it's fundamentally shifting the development of our brain. And that can sound like a really pretty scary ending for us. But because our brain is able to shift and change and actually has in very specific brain areas the ability to generate new cells, we want to be able to bring that into the therapeutic space. We have so many clients who do really amazing thinking brain therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, internal family systems. And it's really, really powerful work. And yet those triggers still kind of sneak in and pull them off track. And we have a lot of our clients who are like, I knew what to do, but I was still doing the thing I didn't want to be doing. And right. I mean, I think that's just human. I know I do that. Mm-hmm. And when we welcome in neuroscience, it lessens the impact of that past thing that we don't want to be doing, having any power. And it sometimes completely eradicates us tying into that old behavioral pattern. So we don't do it anymore. And that's because we're working where the trauma has encoded and with the neural networks that have grown out of that. And what's cooler than that?
Right.
It's like we've got a foundation, and if half the foundation is crumbling, we don't want to build a pretty new house with a crumbling foundation. Let's go build a pretty new house and make sure we have a really strong foundation. And that's the neuroscience piece.
Right. Yeah. Got it. Awesome. Thank you for solidifying that in our talk today. And also, so you've talked about this throughout the last few minutes, but like, how can people use havening to empower their own healing work? Maybe they do other modalities or other things. So how does that work?
Yeah. Actually, I have a book coming out on that in a couple months, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So it's when they're doing their other work, that CPR for the amygdala is an awesome intervention. If their brain starts to say, I don't like this, I'm uncomfortable, I'm feeling unsettled. Because again, that's that past coming into the present moment and waving a flag from the past that may not belong in the present moment. That's the simplest intervention. And what CPR for the amygdala is those 4 havening touches, or even just finding one. Most people have a sweet spot. So my sweet spot's my arms. If you watch any of my YouTube videos, I hang out here all day long, or I hang out here.
Okay.
And finding the touch that works best for you, and then literally playing brain games. And so sometimes we'll have people simply notice their breath and do breath counts. That's a sufficient enough brain game to help the brain and the body regulate itself. Or singing songs, preferably positive, or sweet songs, maybe not 9 Inch Nails, or going A to Z and finding names of different bands that we like. But what we're doing is making sure that when we're triggered, we can't start to ruminate. because that's what happens when we get triggered. Our brain starts chewing on all the tough data. And when we're doing our therapeutic journey, partly what we're doing is we're bringing up tough stuff to change our relationship with it. But sometimes our brain gets so into the tough stuff, it forgets that, wait, we're supposed to be changing the relationship. And that's where havening and the CPR for the amygdala is a powerful, powerful tool. Just helps the brain get back on track. And the havening touch feels good. I mean, it's actually been proven to lower blood pressure, increase oxytocin, decrease cortisol, increase heart rate variability. If anybody knows polyvagal theory, that's a really big part of it. So our brain and our body go, oh, that feels good. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing the healthy choice, not chewing on the possible tiger that might be hiding behind the sofa.
Yeah. And like, what's the science behind the actual places on your body, like the arms, the forehead, under the eyes? Where did that come from?
So way back over 10 years ago now, there was some QEEG studies, which are brain mapping studies, that were looking at the mechanisms of action of EMDR and identifying what does EMDR, and then they also started bringing in tapping, what's actually happening at the electrochemical level in the brain, meaning the brain waves at any given time while bilateral stimulation or tapping, butterfly taps or the taps with tapping are going on. And what was identified is it's a slowing down of the brain, and that there were certain locations that had an enhanced impact. From there, what we've started to do is look at why did these locations, so it was arms, palms, across the brow and under the eyes, have this enhanced impact, and what does the soothing touch do? And what we've started to really dig into are something called C-tactile fibers, which, to get super geeky for just a minute, are tiny little mechanoreceptors embedded in our skin that go up to our brain and go, hey brain, you're cool. And so that's what we're doing, is when we're doing the touch, we're telling the brain, you're cool. And what's really cool is these little C-tactile fibers link to the exact same brain areas that are impacted by a traumatic encoding. So in a way, we've had the healing power in our own hands this whole time.
Right.
Just didn't know.
Right. That's amazing. Oh, so like, okay. One thing that comes to mind, is anxiety, since I know that you talk a lot about that in your work, as it's right. Obviously a lot of people who've had trauma have anxiety. If people get triggered and are in like a catastrophizing mode, which is so common, and can I personally relate to it, because that's a big one for me. So what about in those scenarios? Like what's the best course of action to apply havening in that kind of scenario?
I love that. It's one of my favorites. So when we're catastrophizing, our little friend Amy, the amygdala, is convinced the world is going to end. Yeah. And there is no other option on the table. And so one of my favorite things to do with catastrophizing is to actually start looking at what's the middle ground. So what if the world ended, and what if nothing happened? Because one of the problems that gets our brain really stuck when we're catastrophizing is we try to talk our way out of it, which is basically lying to our amygdala. She's not going to buy it at all. So we want to find the midway point and invite that to be a possibility. And I'll even invite my clients, and I do this myself because I'm a big catastrophizer, super good at it, to start to narrate that midway outcome. What if it's only half bad? And then once I have a really clear picture of that half bad, I'll start to do the CPR for the amygdala. Because we're not working with that worst case. We're only half bad. Our amygdala is more likely to consider it. It's as though we have two people at a debate, and they're trying to find a middle ground. So we do that CPR for the amygdala. We're going through the debate process. We're giving our brain different games to play with, singing Mary Had a Little Lamb, whatever it might be, until we're calm enough to start to ask a what if question. What if I had what I needed to handle this? And even in that statement, we can check in. What do I need to handle this? Well, I need a sense of confidence, or I need to know I can reach out to somebody for help. I need X, Y, Z. And then we're moving into what's called the Creating Possibilities protocol, which starts with a what if question. And the neuroscience of that is our brain loves to Google search for like experiences and to answer questions, which is why ruminating is a favorite task of an anxious brain.
Right.
Because it's answering questions. It's trying to figure out uncertainty or fear. And so instead we go, well, what if I had what I needed? And applying the havening touch, of course. Well, what do I need? What if I had, and just kind of start to explore internally with that what if. And it's as though you're Google searching your internal resources, and your brain will start slowly linking those in. And part of what the touch is doing is increasing the presence of serotonin in your system, which enhances the brain's ability to associate to like stimuli. Now, it can associate to hard stuff if given free rein, but if our thinking brain's going, go over here, which is why cognitive behavioral therapy is awesome to engage with havening, because you're using your CBT tools and enhancing the neurobiological efficacy of it. Right. And then we're just going, what if? What if it wasn't so bad? Well, what if it wasn't so bad?
Right.
But the amygdala is buying, and we're not fighting her. We're working with her because ultimately our brain wants us to live, because if we're not alive, our brain's not functioning.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love
with it.
Yeah, I love the what if, because in my experience of catastrophizing, the what if comes up a lot in the negative sense. It's like, what if this terrible thing happens, and what if the world ends, and what if yada, 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 all that stuff. So yeah, just kind of shifting it to, well, what if I can handle this? What if I'm supported, and, all that stuff. I love that.
Yeah, well, and thinking about as children in a chaotic or volatile environment, those what ifs were frequently what saved our lives. Right? We're reading the micro gestures and saying, what if I don't have an expression while mom or dad is doing this? What if I clean this up before so-and-so walks into the room and steps on my toys? So our brain has learned that rumination and that seeing into the future, that worst case scenario, is the way we stay safe. So we're taking a tool our brain has really successfully put to work in the past for safety, and giving that tool a new job to thrive now. Because our brain doesn't know we're not there.
Right.
So we're upgrading it. We're leveling it up, but saying, thanks, brain, high five. You rocked that tool in the past. Let's give it a new job now, which our brain loves. And we're not working against our neurobiology, because the neural freeways are there. We're just saying, let's take this freeway and go this way.
I love that. That's a great way of thinking about it. And absolutely, I love your examples of, the things that may have happened to us in childhood, and in that mechanism absolutely kept us safe. And our brain worked around things and, made things more workable for us because of it. And so are there any particular types of childhood trauma that you see respond better or anything to havening, or anything you could share about that?
All of them.
Okay.
I don't mean to be glib. The reason I say it that way is because of what we know happens with childhood trauma and the impact on the brain. And havening, the scientific name of havening is the amygdala depotentiation technique. And that's what we're doing, is shifting very tiny little nuclei in our amygdala that have learned one way of being. And I like to think about our amygdala as having 3 core values. Am I safe? Am I lovable? And do I have what I need to be successful? And havening, because it's not just about healing and delinking the traumatic experiences of the past, but it's also about building in agency and resiliency and the connection to self. It helps the brain create what should have been but wasn't when it comes to developmental trauma, whether it be any of our colloquial types of abuse, and I don't want to say colloquial because they're not, but the common, the 4-factor abuse, whether it be neglect or our just even growing up in a pandemic right now with harried parents who are doing their best but aren't able to attend in the way they used to, and a lack of social engagement.
Right.
And those C-tactile fibers, that's critical, because even if I do this, your brain is mirroring the fact that, oh, wait, Kate's doing that, and we call it a hug hack. We can actually, through distance, and interact with each other as though we're providing physical affection, which creates safety in the nervous system.
Right.
So it's a really, really powerful tool. And again, I really like to remind people that it's a bolt-on to the incredible work that they're already doing, whether that be a mindfulness practice, their self-healing journey, or their more intentional clinical work, because it just helps the amygdala go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And our amygdala feels all the feels, not just fear. Our amygdala is all about connection and love and confidence and agency and excitement. And so it's working with that too.
Yeah, I love the mirroring and that hack you mentioned. That's powerful. And luckily we can, even if we're not physically in presence with one another, we can still see, right, that mirrored back to us in these forms. So I love that. So why don't we talk a little bit about how people can learn more about you? I know you have some programs and great offerings, and there's a couple buttons below that link over to your site. So what do you have for us?
So February 25th, on February 25th, I've already partnered with them, but we'll be doing a one-day workshop with PESI, which is a kind of renowned psychoeducational program offering organization. They're phenomenal. And so for anybody who'd like to lean into and learn more about havening and how to bring it into clinical work, coaching work, healing work, that's a great inception point. You'll get to really understand how to integrate this into your work with other people. We have an offer code below. It's $100 off. And then you also have the on-demand option if you'd like to purchase that. But if you attend the live event, and please come show up, I'd love to have the support. Then you also have access to the on-demand video for, I think it's 90 days after that event. For individuals who are looking to integrate this more intentionally into your own self-healing practice, we have a mindfulness and resiliency program coming up on June 10th. And the discount code below is 50% off code. So I think it's $25 to come to that. And it's a 3-hour program that is all about how do you work with havening mindfulness to build resiliency. And it really is unique in that it tackles a specific thing that is special to people with childhood trauma. And I experienced this myself, where feeling calm can feel scary. And that's relaxation-induced anxiety. And so for some of us, that shows up as overperforming and so many other ways. And it's a big barrier to helping us settle into our mind and our body. And this specific program is really designed to help navigate through that, to deepen a sense of safety inside. Because if we can't be calm inside our body, then it's harder, not impossible, but harder to move into a strong sense of resiliency and thrive. And then, of course, we have loads of free resources on the YouTube channel, and just started the TikTok channel, which is a lot of fun. And the unique thing about the TikTok channel is people can put in questions, and the entire channel is all about answering people's questions in 1 to 3 minutes. So any question you have about trauma, psychology, or neurobiology, pop it in and you'll get a video answer. And I do 1 video a day.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. And I love what you said about that relaxation-induced anxiety. Is that what you said? Wow. I resonate with that too. Absolutely. I'm sure so many people also have a similar experience to that. So buttons for all of those amazing offerings and upcoming things are right below everyone. So you can go check those out. Do you have any last insights before we wrap up?
Yeah. The one thing I just want to tap into is self-compassion. And gratitude, actually, those two. Our amygdala loves self-compassion and gratitude. Amy has a hard time freaking out if we're in a state of gratitude or self-compassion. And so just taking little tiny micro moments in the day to just say, hey, self, it's okay. To give your brain a high five for doing its best. It's always trying to take care of us, to express gratitude to the self, or simply for a beautiful sunny day or a delightful cup of tea. That in of itself is teaching the brain to pay attention to what you want it to pay attention to.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your final insights and for doing this. It's so great to reconnect with you.
Thank you, Andy. It's always great to see you.
Yeah. And thank you, Avaiya students, for watching or listening, just for showing up for yourself today and being willing to go on this journey. And we will see you all again very soon. Take care. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this latest class with Dr. Kate Truitt. She was back with us today talking about healing trauma with the havening techniques, integrating neuroscience into the healing journey. I love this conversation. I think Kate did such a great job of integrating some very technical things, brain science, neuroscience, trauma into words and language that we can understand and practices that we can understand. So I thought that was really great. And I loved the conversation around what a trigger is, right? Instead of being triggered by the word trigger, which is so common for so many of us these days, it can be an opportunity for proactive healing, right? If we consider a trigger and take a perceptual shift in what a trigger is and looking at it as an opportunity for proactive healing, I think that's such an empowering way to look at it. So I hope that you found that helpful, and all of the different havening techniques, the ways that you can apply this self-healing touch to yourself and your body and your journey. I hope that you found it helpful, and I hope that you apply it in your life. So if you enjoyed this class with Dr. Truitt, she is also featured in Avaiya's Overcoming Depression and Loneliness Masterclass. So if you want to check her class out there, you can find that on the homepage of avaiya.com. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Take care.
Avaiya has changed my life.
Avaiya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaiya is my home.
Avaiya is personal freedom.
Avaiya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaiya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaiya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaiya is what the world needs.